Right, well, there's still some people coming in, but I think we'll get started because it's a couple of minutes past 11. So yeah, feel free, as always, anyone that joined the first discussion that we did, feel free to chat to us, raise your hand. We've got some polls and questions to ask as well. We've got some questions already from some people that have got in touch with us, so we'll read those out and try and answer them as best as we can. So I'll start with some introductions for those of you that don't know any or all of us. So I'm going to start with Lauren, who's from the officials, to do a quick intro to herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren Bradley. I'm the founder of the officials, and where we specialize in training. And I've been an assistant for, I actually realized it's closer to 15 years now, because I actually was an assistant for 2 years in university. I totally forgot. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm doing this longer than I thought. But anyway, I'm really passionate about training. I live in London, though obviously I'm American.
Thank you. And Hen, I'll go over to you next. So Hen is from Henrietta Recruitment.
Hi, I'm Henrietta. I've been a recruiter on and off for about 20 years, which is really aging me this morning. But I've recruited assistants specifically for the last 12 years. And I'm excited to talk about training. I'm based in London, but I work all over the UK with people, and I've got a heavy background in hedge fund and private equity recruitment, so that's where my speciality lies. But yeah, I can't wait to talk about the training this morning and what it means in terms of recruiting as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it as well, because I think that's going to be really interesting. And over to Laura as well from the Assistants Handbook.
Hi everyone, so as Hannah says, I am the founder of or creator of the Assistants Handbook. I have been an assistant since 2012, so just out of uni. As you can tell, I'm a Londoner, but I'm currently based in Dubai, so it's super sunny, which is why I look mega washed out, probably.
Oh dear. So you can see we've got a really diverse panel here. I'm Hannah Gray, I live in Essex, and the founder of the Office Management Group and Black and White Office Consultancy, which really all stems about support and training and coaching and development for mostly office management professionals, but also anybody really in admin that has a responsibility for running any aspect of their office. So the same as everyone else on the panel, incredibly passionate about development and learning and coaching for people in these roles. So I think you're in for a very interesting discussion today, and please do feel free to take part in whatever way is comfortable for you. So a quick bit of background. As I said, we're all deeply passionate about training, and if you follow any of us on social media, particularly on Instagram, which is really how the four of us started to form and connect with one another, and how these panel discussions were founded, you'll have no doubt seen the level of passion that we show for this and for the admin profession as a whole. And in particular, the services that Lauren and I offer, as we've just said, are centred around training, support, coaching, development, and providing resources to people in these roles. We've spoken in the past, we started to touch on it in our last discussion, which was about titles in these positions, and towards the end we started to get onto training, which is why we then decided to go ahead and do this next chapter on this topic in particular, or more the lack of training, I think, is probably where we want to start with. And it's cropped up so much in our individual conversations with one another and in group discussions and on chats and things, so we wanted to share this in a wider panel discussion. We want to talk about our own experiences, we want to hear about yours, and tackle the topic so that we can continue to champion for change in this area. I think that's what we're aiming to do, and we'll continue to do it, to fight for the right for people to be recognised as professionals that deserve just as much training and development as any other professional in any other business. So we've put some polls up, which I think I'll kick off with, if that's okay for everybody, and then yeah, we'll get some of your views and we'll start the discussion. So I'm going to pop these polls out now. I'm going to put them to the panelists as well, so you ladies can vote. So the first question is, have you ever asked for training and had it declined? The second one is training and development important to you? And the third is, would it be more attractive to you in your career and job if a company actively offered support and training and development for your role, and you knew that perhaps before you even accepted the job? one thing actually I should have asked as well is, do you ask about that at the stage of job interview? Maybe, Hen, that's something you could start talking about. Do you often hear of candidates asking you that to find out what company's appetite is like where training and support is concerned at that interview and that early research stage?
No, not very often. And I think that's potentially a confidence issue. I think if companies are not forthcoming about what they might provide, and often they don't talk about it much, they really don't go into a lot of detail. Certainly a lot of the companies that I've worked with over the last 10 years, it's not at the forefront of their mind. So if I don't talk about it, or if a candidate doesn't talk about it, then often in smaller businesses especially, they aren't aware that that's something that might be required. So that's an educational issue, and that's something that's my responsibility to bring up. But from my experience, I haven't had an enormous amount of people talk to me about whether training is available and what budget would be available, or things that they'd want. Now, that might just be for my sector in the kind of roles that I work in, but I have a suspicion that it's more widely across the board that people aren't engaging in those kind of conversations. That isn't to say that it's entirely the candidate's responsibility to do so, but from my experience, not very often.
And that's something I've literally just thought of, because I've done an awful lot of recruitment in my time, in terms of when I'm an office manager or ops manager, I've hired people to be in my team, receptionists, my juniors, you know, my PAs, facilities support assistants, all sorts. And actually thinking back on the questions I asked them, and when I tell them about the company, I'd mention that I'm a mentor. To me, developing them is important, but I've never been asked by any of them that I can recall what training is available.
No.
So my first advice to everybody, including myself as a business owner, but also to my clients and to you know, my members, is actually, when you are going for a job, make sure that's part of your questioning, is what training and support, because it's showing your appetite for it at that stage, and then you know, and you're sort of setting almost the expectation at that point that this is the sort of person you are, and you're looking for that support, but also then you're getting an early understanding for their appetite for developing your role as well. So yeah, that's interesting.
You have to bring it up. You have to talk to a recruiter about it. The more you talk about it, and of course it's not one person's responsibility to change this structure, but the more you speak about it as an expectation rather than a question of what is available to me, what can I get from the business in terms of training and development, the more likely you are to be able to access it. And at least if you can't access it in that role, you have brought that to the attention of your recruiter, you've brought it to the attention of the business, which has a knock-on effect. And the more we can speak about it and be open about what our requirements are, the easier it's going to be for you to access it long term. It really, I think, is a question of starting that dialogue and
planting a seed, isn't it? Because if you plant it, say you ask it in an interview, you plant that seed with that employer, HR, director, whoever it is you have the interview with. If they decide not to give you the job, or you decide not to accept it, because it works both ways, that seed's planted. So if they didn't think of it before then, hopefully the continual you know, asking of it by different candidates will start to have an impact on them, and thinking, actually, this is something we need to consider. So yeah, that's a really good point. And same to recruiters, to start for recruiters to speak to the clients before the job goes live and say, can I let them know about training that's available, I guess. I'll do the poll results quickly, and then we'll go to Lauren and Laura as well on this one and any other topics. So have you ever asked for training and had it declined? It's a 50-50 split, which is really interesting, and I'm actually quite pleased to see that, and it not tip to the no too much, to the yes too much. I think it's quite good that it's even. It's not quite as bad as I thought, perhaps, with everyone on today. Is training and development important to you? No, not surprisingly, 100% yes, and that's why no doubt you've joined this discussion as well. And then the third question about being more attractive to you in your career and job if a company actively offered that, 93% yes and 7% unsure. So that's quite interesting. Those who said unsure, would be good to hear from you as to what I guess would make you go for that role over knowing that they support and encourage training. So Lauren, what are your thoughts on what Hen and I were just discussing in regards to asking for it at that stage before you're even locked in with a company, I guess, to say, hey, what's on the table for me?
Why don't you go ahead, Lauren?
Okay, I think it's definitely a question of confidence, and it's a question that I never asked. So I've had 3 quite long kind of roles, and it's only in the 3rd role that I actually asked, can I attend conferences? Can I do this? Can I do that? What training's available? And that takes a lot of confidence. The difficulty is when the response is, oh, but you're an assistant, so what training could you receive? Or why do you want to learn about project management, for example, when you're an assistant? We need you to be in the office. We don't need you to be off learning something else. And that's a really difficult, especially when you're an interviewer and you're trying to make a good impression, that's a really difficult position to be put in, because you're obviously interviewing for a role, but when you interview for a role, you want to know if you've got a career progression there. And a key way of knowing that is if they offer training or not. Because if they say, no, there's no training, and you're like, but am I going to stay pigeonholed like this forever? Or do I have the opportunity to grow? And I've been lucky in my roles that I have always had the opportunity to grow. But in other interview settings, it's kind of been, no, you're an EA or you're a PA and that's your box and we don't want you to move out from that. And it's really difficult, and it knocks your confidence every time.
It does, and this is something, I think training, development and career progression sit quite neatly like that, and you've touched on it there in regards to being pigeonholed and put in that box, and that's a question and some quotes or discussion points that have come up by people that are joining this call today or that can't join and have asked me to raise it. But what is that development path and that career path anyway in the admin profession, which I think we'll go on to probably towards the latter part of this discussion. So Lauren, what are your thoughts on your experiences there? I think you've hired in the past as well in your roles. Have you ever asked that question or been asked that question about support and training?
With everything everyone said, and what I think we could be talking about any subject and it will continually come back to how we present ourselves and our own mindset and the narrative and how we contribute to it. So like what you and Hen were talking about, of saying just planting the seed, not just for yourself, but for the rest of our community, is really important. It is this sort of shift where we all start talking about training. And now's a really great time to do that, to say, listen, lockdown through, like I nearly had a nervous breakdown trying to keep up with all the demand of training demand during lockdown, because suddenly we had more time and people needed, said suddenly I don't have to commute. It was really amazing how everyone wanted to connect and they wanted to do it in a way that they were learning, which I thought was really, I don't know if we've seen a real bump like this since maybe when the housing market fell or anything like that, where people were getting laid off and they were like, okay, how do I differentiate myself? So, but the big key thing that I think coming out of this is just that you have more power than you think, especially when you're going for a job. You think that you're at the mercy of them. That is when you have your most negotiating power. Once you're in the job, you're locked in. And it's really hard to teach that. It's something you have to experience. You have to have experienced a couple of crummy jobs or a couple of places where you didn't get the thing you want, or at least to find a job at the very beginning that gave you all the things you want, to realize how, when you go out there again, that it's possible. So it's almost like something you have to experience. It's really hard to pump people up, or they need exposure to people like us who say, we do ask for it. And like you said, I've hired people to work with me, to work in my team, and I'm always their mentor, always, every time. And I never had a mentor, which is one of the reasons why I started the Officials, is because I needed to learn from other people. and I love learning. And at the time, it was 2015 that I started the community. I just wanted to start a community of like-minded people to say, like, how do you do this? I knew we were all learning the same way. So really be aware of the power of your words. From the minute you speak with a recruiter, from the minute they call you, you dictate that narrative instead of being like, oh, I can do anything. What do you need? Because you need a job. And that's how, believe me, I did that for years. That's why I'm saying that. Of like, yeah, I'm a problem solver. Let's go in there. I'll do whatever you need. We're going to sort this, sort that. And then the reality is, like, you don't get any of the support to do that. And you're the problem solver. So sometimes it's hard to ask when you're like, I need help, when you don't want to taint.
And everyone else is coming to you for help all the time.
Yeah,
and then you suddenly have to go out and flip that role. It is hard.
So start from the beginning. I fully agree with that. That's my takeaway.
I think so. I think this is the first and best advice that I think we I can't speak, haven't had a lot of sleep, can give you, is to put that on the agenda when you're going out looking for a job. Okay, so what about the people? Dana is one that's active with us on Instagram. Thank you for all the posts and sharing that you do for us as well. It's much appreciated. You definitely are in the situation, like a lot of people, where you're asking for training, you're keeping it on the radar, and this is my advice: keep it in one-to-ones, put it somewhere in your one-to-ones. I've done this, I've done that, this is what I'm working on next, this is what I plan to do, this is what I need from you, I need you to approve this, so on and so forth. And this is training that I think would take me to the next step, or enable me to do this, or enable savings to the company, whatever the justification might be, but keep it there for every single one-to-one. But she keeps being told no. So Lauren, let's stick with you for a second. What's your...
I know, Dana, we've been talking about this. I've been helping her with this. So there is a point where you can bring in all your statistics on, like, we give a justification document at the officials. So there's a couple of things here. One is, a lot of the training for admins and assistants is expensive. Does anyone else raise your hand here if you think that, like, it's crazy expensive? Like, can you afford a 3-day conference for $1,000, £2,000 or $2,000 wherever you live? Some people can, some, and that's fantastic. Like, if you think in the grand scheme of like how much higher education costs, like, I'm not saying it's not worth that money, especially if they had like 50 speakers or whatever. Like, I'm not saying it's not worth that money. But what I'm saying is, for someone that can't afford it, or their company does not have it in the budget, it may as well be $1 million, right? And so, one, I think that there needs to be more affordable price points. Like, that's why I really love working with all the women here, because I know that they are, they're really passionate about making sure that we help you. Like, this is a free webinar trying to help you, because we really do care about you first before anything. And so that's why, like, one thing, like, I had to bring in an affordable price point, that if I could not convince my boss to pay, we are $18.99 in dollars. It's 15 pounds at the moment. If you can't convince your boss to pay 15 pounds for you, you got to rethink who you're working for. But also, I want to be sure that the assistant can pay for it themselves, while we're always trying to get them to ask their company. Actually, our biggest issue is that they don't ask. Good for Dana for asking, because mostly I did a quiz on Instagram asking people, one was very similar to what Hana did just now at the beginning. But I realized I forgot to ask one really crucial question, which is, have you ever asked? And the options they had were yes, no, I'm too afraid, or no, I know they'll say no. And the number one answer was no, just no. And they were like, and I was like, do you think your company will pay for it? Was the one right before that. And they're like, no. And I was like, okay, but have you asked? And it was just, well, no. So it goes back to contributing to that narrative. So in this case, you have to think about who you're working for. And I think, because there is a certain point where the only way they'll learn is to see they lose talent. However, hopefully it doesn't get to that point. Just asking. If we could get everyone to just ask, and 50% got a yes, think how many assistants out there are going to get training. And that's I mean, Dana, I feel so bad because I know she knows she's doing everything right. She knows what she's worth. She's asking for it. She's found alternatives that weren't super expensive. She was specifically asking about the officials and stuff like that. And she's been like, well, screw you. I'm going to train myself anyway. And she's, it's something you have to think about. It's something you have to think about. How am I going to get to this by hell or high water? And
I think that's a really good point. Looking at the stats from this poll, I think there was 15 attendees at the time, and if 50% of you got a yes when you asked for it, if everybody asked, then that stat hopefully will increase, because it's much more, like we say, if you're introducing it at interview stage and the recruiters are asking it and this whole community and concept comes together, that hopefully will go up as a ratio. But you're asking for it anyway, you've got a 50-50 chance at the moment, which isn't great still, but that's better than I
already
thought. Yeah. And that's a no on your first ask, potentially. You've got to keep it on the radar, like I say. So, okay. So, Hen, in your experience in the recruitment sector, what do you see happening in regards to training and development? And do they ever ask for your advice in regards to that, in regards to where, when they're pitching a role or they've created a job spec, where it needs to sit, where the development might be? Or is it, here's the job spec, this is what we want, go and find the candidate for us?
Yeah, I think I do a lot of consultative work, so we'll talk about that. But one of the things that companies are inherently frightened of is people outgrowing roles, and fast. And, this is something that I have to discuss and educate businesses about regularly. There's a cost saving in their mind that they're going to do well if they have someone that's going to stay for a long time and can grow. So there's often this promise of growth within a role, but there's no specific way that you'll be able to do that other than proving your own merit. So that works out really well for them and not that well for anyone else. I think that, of course, we talk about training and development as part of it, but I think companies are largely unaware. And that is not, as I think we said in the last webinar that we did, it isn't to do with people not caring. I do think it is an educational issue. That we spoke about job titles and career paths, and that having an impact on people's ability to get different salary levels. Training is not necessarily seen as something that's essential for you to be able to get a higher salary or a different role. So depending on what your goal is. And so I think that it's a combination of difficulties there, that we don't have to have the training in order to get a really senior kind of role. It's not an essential, but that doesn't mean that the training and development's not important.
Okay. Laura, what should a professional do, in your opinion, if they continually get a no? And what's your advice to people who are in this position and simply just not encouraged to get development or pursue it, not given budget, not given support? What's your advice? Let's say, for example, they're in a good job. They love the culture there. They love the environment. The salary's on what they want, but they just want to let's give an example further. So in office management, which, is where my passion is formed from, and I know you've been an office manager in the past as well, so you've got that experience. Let's say you want to take on health and safety, or you're given the responsibility of health and safety, which a lot of office managers are, but you don't actually have any training, any knowledge of it, other than some bits and bobs you've picked up along the way in your career. And you say, look, I want to be able to really own this position. I want to make sure we're doing everything we should be to be on the right side of the law, and I'd like to go for an IOSH or a NEBOSH, which is the best part of £1,000 if you're going for the NEBOSH. What would you do if they say no, but like I say, everything else sits nicely with that business?
I think there's kind of a three-prong attack to it. So number one, the one that Lauren mentioned, which was you need to really look at the company. So if you say that you're like 100% behind the culture, and yet they're not willing to give you something that you actually need from a legal point of view, then those two statements can't really match up. The second prong is You just need to continue pushing for it and continue asking for it. And I think the third prong is looking outside of what is potentially available. So I think that's why the assistant community as a whole is so vocal, especially on Instagram, which is kind of where I am, because everyone knows that we need this knowledge. Most people know that they're not going to get it at work, or that the courses that they're going to potentially do are going to be super expensive and super worthwhile. That's another tangent that I'll go on to in a minute. But being able to have the network of people to say, right, I don't know this information, but I've seen on Instagram that Hana knows the information, for example. Let me connect with her and see if she can help me. And it's not a case of getting free consultancy. It's just a case of saying, I'm at a loss. Is there anything that I can do? How would you approach it? The point that I was making about the training as well is that, especially if you're an OM, especially if you're an assistant, it's really hard, I find, to be told how to be an assistant or an OM by someone who hasn't done the job. So there's some things which are universal, which you should, whoever is teaching you how to do it, that's absolutely fine. I think of someone like Lucy Brazier, who, she's not an assistant, but she is so like involved in the community that when she talks, I definitely listen, because I know that I can learn a lot from her. But there's been other situations where I've gone and I've asked for the training and it's not been relevant. Either it's not been relevant or it's not been up-to-date training. So it's been, here's how you send an email.
It's not practical training you can use today.
Yeah. And that is so frustrating. So definitely, if you're in a situation where you're just being told no, you either need to look outside or you need to have a really difficult conversation with your employer and present them with the information and say, legally, you have to give me this training. Otherwise, the consequences for the company could be massive. But that's not a nice conversation that you ever want to be having anyway.
No. And I think you're right. You know, you touched on it, where everything evolves, right? Technology is such a massive part of everyday life now, but particularly in you know, office management, and I would potentially even say more so if you're in an assistant hatted role, because like Lauren does a lot of tech hacks, you know, there is so much out there that you can utilize, and if you're not keeping up with it, which I have to confess I'm not, right, I am not up with tech at all. I used to be an IT manager, genuinely used to go in and install PCs, carry PCs, I kid you not, put them at desks. This is almost 20 years ago. As a part of a, you know, I've managed all sorts of things, secretaries, 20 secretaries and offices and all sorts around branches. And I used to know tech like the back of my hand. I could code. I used to code, right? I have lost that completely because I haven't kept up with it, because my route went office management and I learned health and safety and business continuity and all these other things. But I think if you don't keep up with it, how can you genuinely say that you're using, you know, the most effective resources that will save time, that will ultimately save money? Because time is money, no matter what you say. Time is money in every sense of the word. And I think that in itself is a justification that, you know, like what Lauren offers and other platforms out there, you know, even if they're free, to just have the time within your work, because it will benefit your business at the end of the day, not just you, but it will directly benefit them, to say, I need the time to be able to do this course. It's free, or it's a tenner, or it's £100, but this is what, you know, 3-point plan, this is what it will get me, A, B, C, and I think it will have this impact on the business, or this impact on my role, which will in turn have this impact on how I support you as the CEO, the MD, whatever it might be. But yeah, you've got to keep up with tech. Does everybody, I don't want to say agree with that. Do you agree with me? Yeah, do you agree with me? Raise your hand. I mean, there's so much tech out there these days. Yeah. Raise your hand if you agree. Yeah, there we go. I just, you know, I just touched on that point that you said, Lauren. I was just sitting here thinking, yeah, you know, it's not just about, hey, I want to develop, but it's about keeping up, I think.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the training, and I know Lauren and I have spoken about this, when you go to a conference or when you look at training, it's all Windows based. And I've already spoken about this, but so for example, I use Mac normally. At the moment, I'm using Linux because my partner had a computer. He was like, here you go, you can just use this. And I think, well, that's great, because I now know how to use 3 different operating systems. And so no matter where I go and work, I will be fine. I know that I have a preference for using Mac, and I kind of now have a preference for using Linux just because it's so user-friendly. And granted, Windows has improved massively. But had I stayed kind of within the traditional training that was available, the chances of me going off and learning all these different operating systems probably wouldn't have been there, because it's not thought as an assistant or as an OM that you need to learn that. It's the same as Agile and Scrum. It's the same as using Kanban boards. Like the closeness between the tools that a developer would use and the tools that an assistant uses are not actually that far apart. And so having access to that is so important, and yet it's not thought to be important. I think Lauren probably agrees with me.
I'm like, preach, preach, preach. Like everything you're saying, you know, I love this stuff. And just so everyone knows, Laura teaches one of our courses. She's one of our guest instructors in the officials, and she is an official. And so she, because we really do believe that every one of you is amazing knowledge, but we all have these massive gaps. I have gaps. I just learned something the other day and I was like, what? Like I have these like jaw drop moments where I just cannot believe I didn't know this thing. And it's because we don't have this consistent training, right? And so, and tech is one of them, which is constantly changing. It's something that keeps coming up, that office-based workers, like Microsoft 365 based workers are going to be, it's not that you shouldn't know that. You should know it well, but you should learn these other things too, because when you go to apply for another job, the reason why Microsoft, in my opinion, keeps working is because it's legacy. And legacy takes a long time to die. And it's not that it's going to die, but it's trying to now catch up. The reason why they're changing their name to Microsoft 365 over Office 365 is because it's called Google Suite. You know, it's not Office or whatever, it's Google Suite. So they're now throwing their name on it. How many times have they changed their name? Hotmail, now, what was it, like 50 different things, and when they bought Hotmail, and now it's Outlook Mail and whatever. And it's because they're trying to figure out what we need. And all the new tech, the exciting thing is it's all so user-friendly. All these, you probably hear UX design, you probably see ads, be a UX designer, learn about UX design. It's because they're making it more and more intuitive. So there's no better time than now. And as Laura said, like you'll learn some knowledge and you get all inspired and you're like, yeah. And then you're like, I can't use this yet, or I can't use this now. This doesn't help me right now. Like I just did a training yesterday on digital filing basics. Ooh, exciting, sexy. Like I would never sign up for that. But I'm telling you, I was so excited to teach it because there was stuff in there where people were like, that blows my mind. And it was about digital filing because it had to do with color coding. It was so sexy. I loved it. But people don't realize that there is really
Post-its. That's all I'm going to say. Post-its.
Post-its. Don't get me started on Post-its and Trello and the Post-it app. Don't get me started. But I totally agree with her. And one thing, sorry, I just want to say, I want to get to a point where we're talking about negotiation. And there's, I don't know if anybody has ever watched any of the masterclass, like masterclass.com. There's a great guy in there named Chris Voss, and he has a book called Never Split the Difference. It's very famous. And in it, his masterclass is brilliant. It's so good. Everyone should watch it that ever wants to negotiate for anything. And he's like, negotiate for everything. Negotiate the price of your coffee at Starbucks. Like he negotiates everything. And he's like, you won't believe how it's like imposter syndrome. You have to push through to see the positive effect, and then you start to push through it. It's like, keep negotiating and see how many times people will actually do the thing you're asking them to do, because psychologically we don't want to disappoint people, whatever. But when it comes to your salary, you think the problem is your boss. You think the problem, or when it comes to training or anything like that, negotiating, you think the issue is that they're saying no. The issue is the problem that you're trying to solve. You're both on the same team. So how do you speak to them differently and in a language they understand that makes it impossible? Like, how can you get to the point and say, like, how can you get to a place where you can be like, okay, well, I've got you. You now have said that you do pay for training for these people. You get them to say why they pay for training for these people. And so what you're saying is, I'm not worth that training, or my role is not important to this company. You get to a point where you talk them out of themselves. And it's so brilliant. It's so brilliant. And what you need is sometimes time and clarity to do that. It's hard to do that when you just go in and they say no, and then you're just like, I hate you. But it's really, really brilliant to think that you're both on the same team. How do you solve this problem? And how do you outsmart the problem?
And I 100% agree. And I think, you know, if you think about a different scenario that's not perhaps as personal to you, because this is a personal thing as well, right? When we're told, no, we're not going to develop you, enough said, it becomes personal. And I think you have to, and I'm someone that takes things so personally, I really have to take that off and push that aside. But I think if you can do that and compare it to another situation where you've had to ask for budget, let's say, for example, you want to upgrade your printers, or, you know, I don't know, someone's asking for this trip and you need to get a little bit more money for them to do this, whatever it might be, and you've had to go and have that difficult conversation that doesn't affect you personally, try and approach it in the same way, because it's no different. The way that you would tackle that, the way that you would put the objectives and the whys and the hows forward, you need to look at it in the same way. Take that personal hat off and say, this is a professional relationship, like Lauren said. You know, this is why, these are the values, this is what you'll get from it, this is what I'll get from it, this is what the business will get from it. And yeah, this, you know, I think that's the thing. And if you do get a no, walk away, process it, give yourself time, go back to it with at least a 3-point plan. I always tend to prep for meetings in every aspect. So make sure you've got your little notes written down beforehand to say, X, Y, Z, this is what I'm going back in with. Calm, you know, keep calm, posture and things, and get yourself ready for it and have that conversation.
Pump yourself up, say, I'm going to get it.
Yeah,
like,
you are.
Positive thoughts are
absolutely
going to be really important. And I just want to throw one more thing there. Jillian Huffnagel is a brilliant EA and executive, like teamed up coach and mentor. She just read our latest course on goal setting and performance reviews, and she mirrors everything that Hana just said. And I heard her speaking on Jeremy's the Leader Assistant podcast, and she was explaining KPIs and ROIs, and it suddenly just like made sense to me. And the reason why that's so important is she's the one that talks about, she was saying to me, the thing about value and language. So I just want to give her credit for that. And we were on the same page, but it was like she gave me the way to articulate it. And the reason why this course to me was so important, I asked her to write it, was because it sets you up. You don't have a review tomorrow. You don't have a review in a year, but it's talking about your value. You have value now. Mm-hmm. And so being able to have the language of not that I set up. So in the course that we actually made an example based on Sesame Street, based on their mission statement. Then we made company goals for outreach and HR. And then we made assistant goals. And they were like, make sure this trip is set up perfectly, or everything is ready to go and appointments. And then you're like, how does that contribute to anything? But you can see how it contributes to your boss's goals, how it contributes to the company goals. And when you can connect that value and say, well, if you're telling me no, that doesn't align with the values of this company, that doesn't align with the goals that you have set for this company, then you're arguing them, you're having them realize that they're arguing against themselves, right? And so it's really important to understand your company's goals and vision and values. So using that word value, Hana. So I'm pointing you over here. To anyone else, you could be below her, but like that was so important. What you just said was you have to connect it to the value of the company, and you need to educate yourself on how to do that. It's like one of the reasons why Jillian, I felt it was so important she wrote this course. We gave a true example of like a high level goal and how you contribute to that by fixing an itinerary. And being able to speak that language, it takes time to learn how to speak that way and hit them with time, hit them in the pocket and hit them on the clock. And I'm working on an ROI calculator as well, because that keeps coming up. And it works for salary training, any of that stuff, because you have to make them, you have to use their own language, not against them, that's not the right way, but the way
to influence them.
Yeah, to influence.
It's about influencing, isn't it? And I think, there's so much perception. There's a lot going on in the chat, which is fantastic. And there is so much perception, I think, about the admin roles, the admin profession. We were talking about revenue generating roles versus admin roles, but Alex made a good point, and I 100% agree. You're not directly revenue generating, but you're a revenue saver. You know, you're saving time. If you can be developed to save time, because by furthering your development and using platforms and apps and things that save time, I've said it before, time is money. You know, there's so much value in that, and I think it's just about positioning that in the right way so that you can influence that decision and flip that perception, that perspective that is, you're just admin, you don't need development, you're already doing a good job, you're doing what I need to, you to be doing, you're ticking the boxes, you've come in, you can do Excel, you can do Word, you can do Outlook and emails or Gmail or whatever it might be, it's fine. It's actually no, because I can do so much more for you, and this is how, and this is why. I also think, I just made a note on some of the sort of prompts and questions. I personally think when you're going into a job, you know, this is the career path that you've chosen. Hopefully, if you fell into it, hopefully you're happy you did. And I think that's always important to make sure that that is where you want to be first and foremost. And keeping that in mind at all times. Are you still happy? Are you still content doing what you're doing? And then understanding before you ask for training, just a little bit beyond getting that training under your belt, where do you want to go? Because they may ask you that question. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be? Is it targeting, or is it targeted at that right career path for you? And some of the questions we've had are about the career path. Because if it's not why are you bothering, but, you know, why would you do it if it's not quite weaving you to that career path that you've got in your mind and you're gunning for? So keep that in mind, I think, at all times.
And not just career path, but life path. Where do you want to be in your life first? And then does this hum? There's a great TED talk by Shonda Rhimes about, she did that book about the year of yes, or whatever she does, but it talks about, and she's on set and she's the decision maker, she feels this hum. And I feel that when I'm helping other people, and I love helping people to help other people, so that's why I became what I became. But remember the bigger picture too, and say like, okay, the career path feeds the life path, so have that set out. Like we talk about that. I talk about intentional search and getting the job course, but like we should all be doing that and making sure we see that path for ourselves. It's a crazy path, you know, it's never exactly what you think it's going to be, but just as long as you see that goal in sight, it's the same reason why we're talking about connecting this to goals. They are really important to keep you on the right path. So I agree with you fully.
They really are. But I also think, you know, I'm looking at the comments about people feeling value is within a business, and I'm so disappointed to see that a lot of the businesses I work with really do have an excellent understanding of what you can do, and I can't do what you can all do. I don't have that skill set and the experience, but I know that there are many people who really do value everything about what you're bringing to an organization. I think that from what I'm hearing, and I think Lauren would agree and everyone would agree, there is a lot of a confidence issue in this, in that I know when people come to me and they want to look for a job, or they're talking about their career path, as you were saying, Lauren, that many people are very clear about what they want and how they want to get it. And that's kind of like, it's kind of intimidating when someone's like, right, I know what I want and this is how I want to get it.
Do you prefer to work with those type of people?
I'm happy with everybody's personal aspect. One thing I think is great is that people can talk to me about it. What my job, I feel, is to fill in the gaps where you can't advocate for yourself with a client. So if you are working with a recruiter, please try to ask them to work on your behalf on all these kind of issues. If you don't have the confidence in the first instance about your salary, that's going to have an impact on the salary that you can get. That also then has an impact on the traction that you get in terms of roles, and therefore the training and development. Lauren is so spot on that you have to have the goal and the game plan really about what you're after, because people will tell you based on their clients, or another recruiter will tell you based on their client experience what's possible. You're the one that really has to know what's going to be right for you before you start taking that advice. It's about having the confidence to do it.
Totally. Right, I'm going to go through some questions. I'm conscious that we are running out of time. Before I do that, I'm going to make a proposition that we probably do another session, because I think we're going to keep going with these, about the career path specifically. So we covered titles, we're covering training, I'd like to look and explore career. I mean, hands up if you guys would be keen on that as well, in terms of the attendees. But I think we start to look more at the career path and where the different career options are for all the different admin roles, because I think office management and EA can take their own paths, and you've got all sorts of other things in there. So for people that are asking about the career side, I think we'll park a lot of that and we'll save that in the main for our next discussion. I'm assuming you girls are up for the ladies, you girls are up for the next one. Thumbs up from Laura. Good. Okay, I've roped you into it already. Okay. So Alex has asked, what do all the panelists feel about an accreditation for this industry, like ICB, a RIC, CIPD, as a professional training program that people aspire to, and that sets a professional training program and to achieve that our role is elevated? Yeah, so that our roles are elevated. Yeah, I mean, you've got the Institute for Administrative, the IAM, Administrative Management Professionals. I can't think what it stands for now, and I should know because I'm talking to them about accrediting our courses at the moment. Not very good. I will remember what that is one day. So you've got that body which can do endorsements. So we're looking at getting our new office management training courses endorsed, and then eventually, if they're successful, we'll look at getting them accredited. And I think never forget, when you're doing these things, even something like this could possibly count towards your CP, your continual professional development hours. You know, the webinars and things that we put out on the office management portal, which are generally about office management, health and safety, key skills, not so much on the tech side, as I say, because that's not my bag anymore. Lauren's ones, you know, they will all count towards your CPD. So I think there are some bodies out there, but yeah, perhaps that's an area that needs to be explored further. I think it would be a cost thing. It wouldn't be cheap.
I really am excited to talk about this. Like, really excited. Like, I've got a fire inside me about accreditation. So I worked in higher education for years. I studied instructional design. I have a master's degree in, excuse me, interactive media, where we studied instructional design. Here goes Lauren. Martin knows about this. Okay. So there's right now a training out that keeps advertising that it's CPD certified. Everyone's probably seen it. It's a company that I actually really love, and the training is actually probably good. I don't know. I talked to CPD. They are, in my opinion, full of it. They don't know. So I just want to say IAM or IMA or any of the governing bodies having to do with our industry is a separate subject. But any of these ones that are like quite broad, literally it was paying money to get a sticker. It pissed me off beyond belief. It was $2,000. So I would be level 20 because I release 12 courses a year for this year. And so it would cost me £2,000 to slap their sticker on there. I was like, okay, but what are you looking for? Like, what does it need to be? And they were like, because I actually wrote a course for somebody else. Somebody asked me to write a course I was paid for by a company that releases like business online courses. They were wonderful because they went to an assistant, where I know other companies that don't do that. One of them rhymes with Schmidtman Training. And they charge £3,000 for that. You don't even ever talk to anybody. So anyway, so this one, it was just money. He couldn't tell me. He's like, we just make sure it's like professional and you have like an intro and stuff. I'd gone back and forth with him 50 times, 50 frigging times. And he keeps trying to tell, he must know, because I'm like, I don't trust it. I don't like it. You're not telling me any value that I'm getting from this other than the fact that I get this sticker on here. So it makes it seem like it's professional. I can't find a company that cares that a course is CPD certified. So if anyone, please tell me. I'm looking for someone to say, my company will not pay for training unless it's accredited. Somebody please tell me that. I also worked in higher education, and I know that though they are accredited, and you need to be accredited by specific bodies, that you're not a rip-off course like the very famous one run by a very famous president right now that went to hell, you know, because it wasn't a good course, right? It was a BS course. So it's important we have these accrediting bodies, but make sure they're the right ones. And also reviews, speak with other assistants, listen to their testimonials, actually talk to them and say, did you get real world training out of this? Talk to the trainers and make sure it's the right stuff for you. But like CIPD is closer. is closer to like an actual governing body to me that understands what we need to learn. I actually don't know any of the acronyms because I would never myself fight to get like be master wizard of IIAIP, blah, 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 because I don't care, and neither does my employer. They just care that I can do my job. And so they want to know, like, I can show a certification, like at the officials now, we just kicked off certifications to say, I know how to do this. And we actually put on the certification what you learn how to do, but it is just essentially a piece of paper for you. I'm not really concerned whether you get a certificate or not. We're doing that for you so you feel a sense of achievement and so you can show it to someone what you learned. But I really just care that you learned the thing you needed to learn. And so I totally understand why Hannah's going for IAM certification. That might be something I might do someday as well, but really a lot of it is like, it's the reason why are you doing, because Hannah, you already know your content's fabulous. We all know your content is fabulous, but it helps legitimize it. It helps.
Yeah, it's that. And it in terms of marketing, I'll be honest, they've got a massive reach. And I've been an assistant and a PA, but my passion really is office management now. And anyone that does both of those roles, my God, you're incredible. And there's such a gap, which is why I founded the Office Management Portal, which is now why we founded the Office Management Group, and all these things that I've been working on for the last 4 years. And there is such a gap. And speaking to the IAM, they've said, some months ago when I started to talk to them about it, we've got so many office managers registered that might have the assistant side of their role as well, but there is no course for them. There's no training for them. So this would be quite unique, and we would be, I think the words were, we would be delighted to support it and to endorse it. They obviously will check the content, but that's why it's for me, it's another reach. It's also, like you say, that sense of achievement by being able to say this is endorsed or accredited if we go down that route here. I was designing the certificate the other day, which I might send to you, Lauren, because you're so much better at designing stuff than I am. There's some sort of badge on it, but I've still got sitting right behind me all my certificates from school because I'm such a geek. Even my 100% attendance ones, because I was doing a clear out the other day, in the file behind me. And I took my certificates of achievements, like my Pitman training and things like that, my legal secretary, my ILEX, I think it was the legal diploma. I take them to my interviews and put them at the back of my folder. Just, no one sees them, but just to give me that extra boost, like, hell yeah, I've achieved this.
That's a good argument. Yeah.
So I think, certificates, like, go for it, endorsement. I'm just conscious of time. I just want to get a couple more questions out that we've had, so that people don't think we've forgotten. So Clara asked, most professionals within an organisation have career paths. However, in my experience, there's a lack of pathway. So I think Clara will pick that one up in the next discussion that we do. But why is it in organisations that they don't have budgets for development and training or resources for admins? And they don't see it as a career path. Why do you think that is? And Laura, do you need to drop off now?
I'm going to need to drop off in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But just on that particular point,
we can't hear you very well.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. So as we were saying in the previous webinar, the understanding of what the role actually is really difficult to get across. And if you haven't been an assistant, it's very difficult to understand it. So there's the two things of it's hard to explain and it's hard to understand if you've not done it. Which means that when you're trying to explain the importance of having training, something will always get lost. And it's the thing of, but you're great at sending an email and you're great at doing all of that. So there's no need to develop you any further because you kind of hit the nail on the head and we know that you can do the job. And that's really difficult to then be able to turn around and say, but if you gave me access to all of this, think about how much better I could be at X, Y, Z. But yeah, on that, I'm going to have to jump off. I'm really sorry.
Thank you so much.
Good luck. She's so clever. Love you, Laura, or wherever you are on the screen.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Okay. Let's have a look. So, do the panel think we feed into this way of thinking of, we're enabling it? Yeah, you guys are nodding and you picked up on it earlier. And yeah, we need to be more can do, will do, I'll get this kind of people, and we're selling ourselves short.
I think so, definitely. I mean, look, I left school when I was 16. I've got 1 A-level. I trained as a pastry chef. I have no formal qualifications apart from my absolute knowledge that I like a growth mindset. I want to know what I'm doing. I like to know what I'm going to do. I like to learn things. I like to get on board with stuff. I had training in sales a million years ago, which served me very badly, really, given what I do now and how I work now. But I think you have to know that you are in a stronger position than you might feel, especially when people come and talk to me about what they want to do. Be confident about what you do. There are loads of people who are into this industry who understand what you're capable of, but the confidence, I think, it precedes everything. And if you don't have the confidence, you have to reach out to people who can help you get that, whether it's a recruiter, whether it's someone like Lauren or Hana or all the people in the industry, because you have to know that you are so capable. And you, as EAs, I think you have such an enormous potential for growth and a willingness and openness to learn. I think it makes me feel incredibly sad hearing your points of view about not being valued. And I think that the courses and perhaps the accreditations and the knowledge will give you more confidence to just push through and really feel good about what you can do, because you bring an enormous amount. Certain people really get it. You just have to feel that you do those things. It doesn't have to be that you've had formal training in various areas, unless it's legally required, obviously. But it definitely comes down to that feeling, like you said, Hannah, you take your certificates with you. It's like a confidence boost. It just has to come from knowing that value and worth. Yeah. Regardless of what you think other people feel about your role. And not everybody who works within an organization who gets training is a fee earner. That's not the case. You'll find somebody that has training in all areas of the business that's not fee earning, as an example, if you need it to boost your argument, perhaps. So
I'd look to mentors as well. I think there's so much value in mentors and coaching. So if anybody is within an organisation, because I know there's some people on who are virtual assistants or private PAs, but if you're able to access people in a different profession to you within your organisation that you know are supported, not necessarily, like Hen says, a fee earner, and ask them to be your mentor. There's so much value in that, and I think mentorship is lost in a lot of organisations, particularly if you don't have a manager that you can perhaps look to be a mentor as well, and you want to separate them. So that's a really valuable thing.
For a small to medium business, you might be the only admin. You might be the EA, the head of HR, the office manager, the receptionist in a company of 80 people. You know, who do you have to look for?
Yeah.
Look up to. Yeah.
Okay, we had another question, which is what training qualifications and courses are required to be an office manager or a PA? I mean, there's none. I think most of it is experience, but as we discussed already, you know, I think you have to keep up with it. I think you have to keep up with the technology. I think you have to keep up with the skills and the development in that area to keep enabling development and improvements for you and for the business. And in office management, it's a little more complex because the roles you wear are so much more diverse. You could be, like Lauren said, head of HR, so you've got a lot of good courses, and the CIPD ones in particular there. You've got the health and safety route, you've got the business continuity.
You have actual legal requirements as an office manager. It's very different, and Hannah's resource is unbelievable. I wish when I was an office manager that I had this, like the stuff that she's
Me too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why we created what we created, didn't we? We created the thing we wanted and needed, didn't we? Because we don't want anyone else to ever feel like we did. And your resource is incredible. And the fact that she's bringing in these diverse voices, and especially in Hen, who is such an advocate for us all, and the fact that she's saying, like, I feel like a lot of what assistants and admins do is like practical knowledge. Like, it's very, like, as long as you're clever, you're a problem solver, and you're street smart, that's a degree you need. But then to be able to learn it faster. And that's what when Hen and I talked, we talked like an hour ahead of time. I was like, you're so much like us. She's, you know, she is she's like, oh, she keeps apologizing. You're like, oh, I'm not an assistant. I was like, oh my God, everything you're saying is worthy to everyone that we do, because you figured it out. You found an opportunity, you moved towards it, you set yourself goals. This is all the same stuff assistants have to do. And so Hannah's resource here, and especially for office managers, is amazing, and she's bringing in the right people. So please know that, like, I so much love everything that she says and what she does, and what a great resource you have when it's something that's more complex, because office management in the UK with health and safety is complex.
Yeah. And VAs as well. I've just been speaking to a number of VAs who have started to join the platform. I think Alex, has that under her banner as well. And yeah, we're starting to understand that the portal's beautiful for VAs as well. So if you're a VA, feel free to check it out. It's free. Anyway, so a couple of other quotes we had just to throw out there that I wanted to mention. So someone said it's always a lengthy justification process, group versus individual benefits to a company, 100%. Raise it in a one-to-one every time, and it never gets further than that. So yeah, I think, guys, the top tips from this, my top tip, I'm going to ask Lauren and Hen for theirs. My top tip is to mention it at interview stage. And if you're already within a company, keep it on your one-to-one and have that short-term and long-term career goal in mind. Where do you want to go? And what courses, what resources, because it's not just courses we're talking about and training specifically, it's the resources that's out there. The resources Lauren and I provide, but also the other resources like just talking to Hen and using her as a mentor if she's happy for you to. You're going to get 15 calls now, Hen. People asking you to be your mentor.
Oh, you must be so busy right now.
I'm happy to help people through. I think my top tip is make sure you get the right people to get training from. As Lauren was saying earlier, given that it's not necessarily going to impact you financially or in the type of role that you might receive, so there might not be a tangible immediate benefit, be cautious as to where you find your resources and who you lean on. It's just my name, Alex. I'll put it in the comments, but it's Hen. And I think go to talk to Lauren, talk to Hannah. I know that they really know what they're talking about, and I know you know them really well, and just be picky about where you go for your training. It's so important.
Lauren, what's yours? What's your top tip?
Don't say no for an answer, ever. This is what we do for a living, is that we find a way to do something out of nothing. Is we get handed something and we go, okay, well, we are always planning for every eventuality, right? And so I like see it like a fortress with a labyrinth around it. People are getting in. People are getting training at your company. Your software engineers are getting training, right? And so, like, talk to them. Get people on your side within the business so it makes the person look like, where is your way in? You've tried this way. Okay, we'll keep running around. But be clever about it, because we always know there's another way. What's the new tactic? What's the new strategy? What's the new information that they need? And think of it in a higher way. Speak to us. Talk to us. And then also, maybe you're trying to get into a fortress that sucks. It's just a mud pit inside, right? And you find out that everyone going there is just doing like a big mud fight and they love it, but you're like, why was I trying to get in here? You also have to think of it that way. But just by not taking no for an answer doesn't mean like arguing. It means being clever. It means and I know it sucks. You shouldn't have to do it. And we're working on that. Like, I do corporate training. I just did a major corporate training to a major company, and they were rolling out training to everybody except totally forgot about their assistants. Just forgot about them. And someone just happened to know, was neighbors with someone, and said, oh, what's going on with your life? They explained it. They said, oh, I know someone that trains assistants. What are you doing? And they went, they are not doing anything. Hundreds of assistants. They were so excited when I talked to them. So go above them or go around them. L&D and HR, that's what they're for. You're talking to the wrong person, maybe. Let me talk to L&D and HR. Be like, I love this company. Can you guys just take a look? They've got all these, and I'll soon have endorsements from these big companies that you can share, or someone else. Like, it doesn't have to be me. I'm only talking about me so much because we're talking about training, and that's what I do. You see the last one, like, I'm not here to just like shove it down your throat, but like, I'm trying to genuinely say to you, how can you get there? And that's the problem I'm constantly trying to solve. You're clever people. It's a challenge. It's a fun challenge. mostly think of it that way and go for it.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Agreed. It's
Don't
possible.
take no. Yeah, you just got to keep going. And I think that passion, you guys are obviously passionate about it. We are. And I think that passion is what you have to hang on to keep driving it and to keep going, because you love the jobs you do, or hopefully you do. Otherwise you wouldn't be doing them. And I think to keep fighting for that job, for your own career, for your own benefit, but also for the companies, is the right thing to do. So keep going. We'll be back. We're here if you need us. You know, wherever, in whatever capacity you need us to be, and we're there to help and keep championing for this. So we'll announce the next date where we will talk about career development.
I'd like to propose something about that.
Sure.
I'd like to see us have a bit more diversity in our panel.
Yeah.
And so I think, and I know, you know, we've got tons of people in our network that we
yeah
that we can into. I know you're already thinking of like people we want in here, but if anyone ever has suggestions, please message Hannah on anyone that you want to see in this panel. And you know, I'll be willing to step back. Or Elizabeth is, yeah, she's lovely. And so if you have any suggestions of people you want to see in here to diversify our group and get differing opinions, please message her or I or her, because this is her platform. So
Fab. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks very much for your input. We hope that was useful, and we will see you all very soon. Take care.
bye, everybody.
Welcome. Bye now. Bye. We'll put this online as well. It'll be recorded. Bye bye.